I love it when home decor pieces can be taken from one season into the next or one holiday into the next, such as Valentine's Day into spring. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Jess, and I like making home decor on a budget. And if you do too, then let's get started. I received these really pretty linen bags from burlapfabric.com. They measure about 7.5 inches by 10, and there's 12 in a pack. And when I got them, I had so many different project ideas in mind, and one of the things I thought of was making a little sack to hold Cupid's arrows. Now, burlapfabric.com was really nice. They gave me a coupon code to share with you. So if you go to their site and shop around, you can use the coupon code GLUELALA5OFF and you'll get $5 off your purchase of $5 or more. To add some stability to the top of the bag, I decided to use one of the clear chopping mats from the Dollar Tree, and I measured out a strip lengthwise. This ran the whole length of the chopping mat, about 1 inch wide, and I cut that down, and then I used my stapler to staple the two ends together to form a circle. Now, the last time I was in the Dollar Tree, I saw that they had these chopping mats, and they're still 2 in a pack, and now it's $1.25 at my store, but the chopping mats were white. So let me know, have you seen these clear ones in your store still, or are they all white now? Because I really like the clear ones too, and I'm hoping they still have those. I have the bag turned inside out at this point, so I took my ring that I formed out of that piece of chopping mat, and where I had stapled it together, I hot glued it in the center back of the bag, and I left about a 1/2 inch gap from the top so that I could add more hot glue and tuck that bag down into the ring to make a finished edge. Then I just kept repeating that the whole way around the ring. I kept tucking it in and hot gluing the flap of the bag over the ring to finish it off, and then that way the bag formed a circle around the top, and because that chopping mat is so stiff and sturdy, it kept the shape at the top of the bag. Once I had the bag all glued into place, then I took the bag itself and I pulled it back through the ring, and that way it gave me finished edges all the way around. And because this bag was already sewed for me, it took a lot of the work out of the way, and it created a cute little cuff at the top of the bag where that piece of chopping mat is tucked inside of that folded over part. Now I needed to create some arrows to go inside of the bag, so I'm using these 12-inch dowel rods that you can find at the Dollar Tree, and I got this really pretty striped ribbon from burlapfabric.com, and you can see that the edges are frayed, and this is wider ribbon. It's about 1.5 inches wide, but it is not wired, which is hard to find. I think a lot of times when you find these wider ribbons like this, they always have the wires in the edges. So I started by taking a piece of the ribbon that was about the length of the dowel rod, because I wasn't sure exactly how long of a piece I needed, and I folded it in half and I cut fringes the whole way down the ribbon. So I cut the fringes to about 1/4, maybe 1/2 inch from the other side. I just made sure that I didn't cut the whole way through. And then I started on one end of the dowel rod with a little hot glue, and I just started spiral wrapping the fringes down towards the other end of the dowel rod. I did this probably about 4 inches down on the dowel rod, and this was to create the feathered look that arrows have on the one side. And you could do this with material, you could do it with felt, you could do it with regular wired ribbon as well. You would just need to take the wires out. Then to create the arrowhead for the other side of the arrow, I took another strip of ribbon about 6 inches long, and I folded it in half, and then I folded it in half again, and I cut a little slit in the center, and that's where the dowel rod's going to go through. So once I had that slit cut, then I just needed to cut from one corner of the ribbon to the other corner, and that was going to form a triangle. So now I have a triangle with a little slit at the bottom, and all I need to do is hot glue that into place on the other side of the dowel rod. So I made 2 full arrows with an arrowhead and the feather on the other side. And then I realized because I was sticking them inside the bag, I probably could just do one or the other. So if you want to save a little time, you could create arrows with just arrowheads or arrows with just feathers on the end, because you're only going to see one end sticking out of the bag anyway. But I thought these arrows were really cute, and these would make really great pieces to hang on a wall or to stick on a shelf too, just by themselves. So to make these look more for Valentine's Day, I decided to take some of these wooden hearts that you can get at the Dollar Tree in a pack, and I took a piece of twine and I folded it in half, and I glued the folded end inside the heart, and then I sandwiched another heart on top of it. That way I can just tie these little hearts to each of the arrows, and if I want to transition this piece of decor into spring or just everyday decor, I can just simply untie the hearts from the arrow. They're not permanently attached. And I don't know if you could see down inside of the little sack there that I made, but I did put some grocery bags in there because that helps the arrows kind of stay scattered and not fall to one side, and it also helps the bag itself stand upright on its own. Then to finish this off, I created this little tag using my Cricut. I went into Cricut's design space and I just typed in Cupid, and this little decal came up that said Cupids, and then there's an arrow underneath. So I thought that would be really cute to tie onto this bag. And again, because I want to keep this up throughout the spring and even in the summer, I just decided to tie this tag onto another arrow so that I could untie it once Valentine's Day is over. So to finish off the top of my tag, I just created another little bow out of this cotton twine, which you can find at the Dollar Tree actually, and I decorated up the tag with that bow. A big thank you to burlapfabric.com for sending me these really cute bags and ribbons to use in this project. Make sure you visit their website, and like I said, use that coupon code so you can get $5 off. I have a lot more ideas for these bags, and I'm really excited about this ribbon too, so I'm sure you'll be seeing this in future videos. If you're interested in the bags or the ribbon, I'll have both of those linked in my description box below. I would really love and appreciate if you give this video a big thumbs up, and make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already, and follow me on Instagram. I try to post over there every day, and then that way you and I can get to know each other. I think heart-shaped decorations are one of those things that can be left up year-round, especially if you keep them more neutral toned. So I got this wooden heart shape last year at the Dollar Tree, and I know they always bring these back every year, so I'm sure they have them in the store now as well. I started by giving my heart shape one coat of white chalk paint. After my paint was dry, I took some greenery that I had on hand. This was a flat piece that I had got at Michael's, I want to say last year, maybe at the end of summer. I know it was on like a heavy discount clearance sale. And I just started taking the bundles off of the flat part to make it easier. I did notice the last time I was in the Dollar Tree that they started putting out some of their spring flowers and spring greenery, so you could get some really nice stuff there as well. And I wanted to outline my heart with the greenery. And these little bundles came in like a 4-pack. I don't know what to call it. Like there's 4 pieces of greenery on each bundle. So it made the work for me a lot easier because I didn't have to clip off each individual piece. I could keep it as a little 4-piece and just hot glue that the whole way around the perimeter of my wreath. So once I had the whole outside of the heart shape covered in the greenery, I went back through where I thought there were a few sparse areas, and I just added some individual pieces in here and there. Now this is something you could do if you wanted it to look more Valentine's Day. You could add some red or pink flowers in with the greenery, or you could just cover the whole outside of the heart with just flowers, and I think that would look really pretty too. For the center of my heart, I decided to use 2 of these chalkboard tags from the Dollar Tree. These are available year-round, not just at Valentine's Day. And I thought the 2 of them glued together fit really well inside of this heart. So I hot glued the 2 together, and then I used a pencil to sketch out the words you and me. And then I used my paint pen, also from the Dollar Tree, which I've really been loving, and I went over the letters with my paint pen. Now, here's a little pro tip for you. Don't forget to erase your pencil lines, because I apparently forgot to erase mine, and I didn't realize it until I was editing that you can still see the pencil lines in there. So I had to go back and erase those. But I think something like this would look really cute with your family's initial in the center, or even a family photo in the center as well. I used a piece of thicker jute cord to connect the 2 hearts together, and also to help hide the holes at the top of each heart because they are kind of big. And then I used the same jute cord, and I just tied a little bow and hot glued that to the top as well. Now when I put my jute cord on, I made sure that the knot was on the back side of each one, and then that way you wouldn't be able to see the knot, but it did create a little bulkiness in the back. So before I hot glued the hearts to the bigger heart, I used a few pieces of craft stick on the back of the hearts to even that out so that it would adhere to the bigger heart better. And it also elevated it so that it gave it more dimension. If you were lucky enough to find one of these jumbo craft hearts at your Dollar Tree, then you can skip this next step because it gets a little messy. I was not lucky enough to find one of those foam hearts, so I had to create one of my own out of floral foam. I started by cutting a block in half and hot gluing it together, and I realized that wasn't going to be quite big enough, so I took another block and I hot glued it lengthwise on the 2 that I had already glued together, so I had a grouping of 3. Then I took one of these chunky hearts from the Dollar Tree just to use as a pattern, and I traced around it on the foam. I used a little scoring tool just to give me a guide of where I needed to go, but I needed the points on my heart to be slightly larger, so that's when I kind of drew them up. And then I started using my utility knife to cut away the excess foam pieces. I wasn't too worried about getting the exact shape because I knew I would be able to define it more once I had the excess off. So I just went around the edges, and then this was when I realized that the foam was not sticking together that well with just the hot glue. So I took a few pieces of a barbecue skewer and I put them in between the foam pieces just to make it more secure so that those 3 pieces would stay in place. So now my foam heart was more secure, but then I realized it's a little too thick. So I had to cut some of the back side of the heart off, and I just kind of eyeballed it. It's probably about 3/4 of an inch that I just cut off the whole way around the edges of the heart, and I was able to just pick the pieces off and then take those skewers out that I didn't need. There were still 2 skewers in there to keep everything secure. Then to round out the heart more and to smooth out the sides, I used my sanding block and created even more of a mess. I had green foam everywhere. I was really wishing at this point that I had one of those already made foam hearts, but in the end it turned out fine, and it was actually really nice because it's green, which I would have had to paint the other one green anyway. So once I had my heart all smoothed out, then the mess continued and I took a pack of the floral moss from the Dollar Tree, and I wanted to cover the entire thing in floral moss. And I've done projects like this before, and I found it's always easier to lay a good pile of hot glue down and have my moss already separated and ready to go, and then I can just kind of plop it on top there and lay a really thick layer down, because that glue will seep right through that moss and it'll burn you. So you want to make sure you add a lot of the moss down on top of the hot glue so that none of the glue comes up and gets you burnt. So I just kept taking my time and doing big globs of hot glue all over the surface, and I covered the entire surface of the heart in the floral moss. I did the front, the back, and around the edges as well. As I completed each section, getting it covered with the moss, I would go back through with my scissors and cut the excess off just to keep that heart shape really defined, because it's kind of easy to lose the heart shape. That's why I extended the top of the heart after I traced it, because I wanted to make sure that you could really tell that it was a heart and not just a blob of moss. Once the entire heart was covered in moss and I cleaned up all the mess, I decided to add a few pink flowers to my heart as well, because I thought even though that's pink and it's for Valentine's Day, I still think pink is a cute color to decorate for spring with also. I took these little, they're called baby's breath. It's not really what I think of when I think of baby's breath, but you know, sometimes the Dollar Tree just makes up their own flower names. And I just randomly glued some pink hearts all over the front and the outside of the heart. Since I wanted this heart to be part of a topiary, I took one of the 12-inch dowel rods from the Dollar Tree and I just stuck it in the bottom. I didn't use any hot glue or anything, and I just put it in a few inches. I already had this mason jar from another project. I had given it 2 coats of the plaster color by Waverly, and I had let it dry overnight so that the paint was really dry, and then I used a sanding block to go over the raised edges to distress it. So I wanted to decorate up the jar just a bit more. I took a piece of this burlap ribbon that I already had on hand, and I used that thicker jute cord, and I cinched it around the center of the ribbon. That way it kind of gave it a bow look, but it's not an actual bow. So once I had the jute cord all wrapped around the center of the ribbon, then all I had to do was hot glue that cinched area to the front of the jar and then tuck the ends in behind the jar to give it a finished look. I created a bow using some pink gingham ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I just hot glued that to the base of the topiary heart. The last thing I needed to do was create a base for my heart to sit inside the jar. So I took one of these foam blocks from the Dollar Tree. I think these are also considered floral foam, but they're a much stiffer foam. They're a lot harder. They're a lot more sturdier than regular floral foam. So I just kept cutting it down until it fit inside the jar. And then I stuck the dowel rod from the topiary inside the foam first, and I measured it against the jar to make sure it would stand out of the jar as much as I needed it to. And then I just added a bunch of hot glue to the bottom of the jar and stuck the topiary down inside. Thanks for hanging out in the craft room with me today. Make sure you go down to the description box and check out burlapfabric.com and use that coupon code. I left some videos on the screen that I think you might like. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you in the next one.